Welcome to this podcast from Stratfor, leader in global intelligence.
Hello, welcome to Stratfor. I'm Colin Chapman. Indonesia's national police chief says the country's most wanted Islamist militant, Nordin Muhammad Top, has been killed during a raid in central Java. It's not the first time that there have been official announcements of Top's demise. Earlier this year, a not dissimilar announcement was made, but this time it does seem he's dead. The police chief showed media fingerprints of one of 4 militants who were killed and said they were Tops. Top, whom the FBI calls an expert bomb maker, is thought not only to have masterminded several attacks in Southeast Asia, but also trained future generations of bomb makers and operatives, along with regional Islamist militant groups like Abu Sayyaf and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front in the Philippines. He's also known as a collection point for funding for militant operations. So his death is a significant blow to the global al-Qaeda network. One of our terrorism specialists, Scott Stewart, still believes, though, that al-Qaeda has the power to create further devastation. In the second part of his interview with Marla Dial, he looks at an intriguing way in which materials to blow up an aeroplane might be brought on board.
I still believe that there is a vulnerability there, and I believe there is still a will there to attack aircraft.
Well, one of the issues that we've seen that was very concerning recently actually occurred in Saudi Arabia.
That's the case involving Prince Mohammed bin Naif last month. What we had was an operative from al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula had hidden about a pound of explosive inside his body, along with the rest of an IED that was triggered by a cell phone. That type of smuggling, using a body cavity to smuggle explosives, is very troubling in an aircraft-type environment, especially if they go back to the modular concept that they had at Bojinka. In that plot, we had the main charge, which was a baby doll stuffed with nitrocellulose, and then they had a blasting cap or a detonator that was smuggled in separately, along with a separate watch and a separate battery. And then the device was built in the restroom on the airplane. Using the body cavity to smuggle in just raw C4 plastic explosive could be done quite easily. It's not going to set off any of the metal detectors, and it would be very difficult to detect using current methods of screening airline passengers, at least the physical type screening. So it would be possible for people to sneak explosives on board an aircraft in their body cavities and then construct a device with other components that were smuggled in their hand luggage in other forms. So the modular approach is very concerning when you combine that with the body cavity method of smuggling explosives.
Where, location-wise in the world, do you think a successful strike by al-Qaeda would be most likely to occur today?
One of the things that they like to do, if possible, is to use tactical surprise or create tactical surprise. And one of the ways to do that is to hit in areas where it's really not expected. I mean, we saw in the 90s, going back to the Bojinka example again, we had this group, al-Qaeda, of jihadists that was operating in Asia. They were operating in Manila, they were operating in Bangkok, and that was a form of surprise by operating in a non-traditional area. So, rather than hitting out of an obvious airport like, Islamabad or someplace like that, we should expect, I think, to see them hit us in a non-traditional airport, perhaps even an airport where there's not good security. So probably a third world airport where there's not very good security, but they do have U.S. flagged aircraft, and that there's also an accessibility of explosives. So places like South America could be a good destination. Asia, again, like we saw in Bojinka, or even perhaps the Indian subcontinent or Africa.
If a strike were to occur in any of those places, even assuming a spectacular or multiple attack type of strike, the way that 9/11 was, do you believe that it would have the strategic impact that 9/11 had? Could that be duplicated?
Well, I think from a couple perspectives, it will be difficult to duplicate that, because I think that just as a rule, the world has become more jaded and more wary of these kind of attacks. And really, since 2001, we've been anticipating the follow-on strike. We've seen a number of plots like the Richard Reed shoe bomb attempt at aircraft, and I don't think it would be a huge shock to the system or a real surprise if this kind of plot would happen. So I don't think it would quite have the shock value that 9/11 did, but certainly it would grind air transportation to a standstill as they tried to figure out what happened and then try to figure out ways to plug any gaps in security screening that would allow such devices to get through.
Scott Stewart there, talking to Marla, and that's our podcast for today. Please join us again tomorrow for our weekend podcast.